Welcome everybody to the Genesis Mindset. So today I will be having a chat with Chiz, or it's tonight for me, so it's daytime for Chiz. So we're going to be discussing pDAI, the Atropa ecosystem, the Atropa liquidity web, teddy bear, and the whole ecosystem in general. And we're going to find out why people from the Ethereum TitanX community are bridging assets over to Pulsechain and pairing with things like pDAI, Bear, and the Atropa ecosystem. Also, in light of today's epic stream with Discord, on the Discourse Syndicate show with SJ, RG3, and there was tons of other awesome Pulsicans on there. KG was on there. Access Alive was on there. If you guys haven't listened to it, I strongly recommend going to listen to it. But a few of the Aussies and myself are starting Telegram groups where Jimmy has been setting up the charity for the purposes of DeFi education around Australia. So we're really hoping to spearhead the endeavors there. And basically, we're just creating a Telegram community. I just created it like 10 minutes ago. So the link is in the description. Join it up. Let's continue with the momentum. But I wanted to just mention it now while we're on stream. And with that, Chiz, how are you?
I'm well, man. How are you?
Yes, I'm excellent, thanks. It's been a really good day actually. As I mentioned, there was the stream with the Discourse Syndicate, and the energy around the ecosystem today, like the way the community comes together to work on these problems, and it's that kind of atmosphere is so much more enjoyable to be a part of than the divisions and the negativity and the fights and this group or that group. The unity is so much more enjoyable. The energy is so much more enjoyable.
Right on. Yeah, I agree 100%. That's why we're here. I mean, really, there's only room for positivity at this point,
Absolutely. It really feels like everything is, I mean, from my perspective, everything is just so amazing on Pulsechain because I'm obviously quite deep into the Atropa ecosystem, and Atropa's done a 250x from the very bottom a few months ago. pDAI's up 60x from that very bottom. Things are amazing within this portion of the Pulsechain ecosystem. So for me, it's just always been continuously optimistic because I've always been looking for those opportunities. And now we're seeing all those greens. We're seeing Bitcoin continue to go. The macro environment's looking really, really positive. Richard Hart's talking about this epic marketing campaign, and the community is really gathering around it. The energy really feels like we're heading towards kind of a parabolic stage on Pulsechain. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but this is what it feels like for me, and this is what it looks like too in the charts.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we've hit the bottom. And how I think about it is in terms of following Pulsechain from the beginning. And on July 5th is when regulatory oversight of Pulsechain and PulseX and Hex and Richard Hart ends here in the US. And so that's big. And so when there's regulatory certainty, and the whole ecosystem can come out from years of being targeted, everything changes. And so it's part of the reason why I'm bridging value back. So I was part of the original sacrifice set of Pulsechain and PulseX. I was in Atropa very early, the first run up of Atropa and pDAI and Bear. I did very well in, and I didn't really understand, what was going on. I just sensed that this was a speculative play that I wanted to be part of. And so I got in very early, then, and then sensed that, Richard and Pulsechain was going to get targeted. I sort of feel like Richard probably, I think he baited the SEC, honestly, how he did the sacrifice. I think he baited them, and he and his lawyers ended up winning, which is amazing. So the point is that I think the bottom's in. I think that regulatory certainty is going to bring new capital, and I think that it's And I think for the Atropa system, I mean, I have a lot of questions now. Now that I'm coming back and I sort of like, see what's going on, I have a lot of questions, and I've learned to look under the hood of projects, and it's very hard to look under the hood of the Atropa ecosystem unless you're on the inside like you are. So that's sort of what I'm interested in. I'll share what we're doing, why we're migrating value over, and how we're pairing. But how we see it, how I see it, is we're pairing with strength, right? And so that's why we're pairing with Bear. Just because I like Bear and I have Bear and I've always retained my Bear, and so now I'm pairing it with strength coming from TitanX. So anyway, yeah.
So yeah, I guess so. First of all, Chiz, just tell me a little bit about your story with crypto in general, because I mean you mentioned a lot of really good points there, but I'd like to know you. Well, actually, first before I ask that, I mean the SEC thing cannot be understated. I mean that's part of this kind of compounding effect that we're seeing, like green candles, macro environment, the SEC, this marketing event, the community coming together. There's all these factors that are coming together to contribute to, like, this kind of like Death Star liquidity power surge on Pulsechain that I've been predicting and feeling in my heart for a long time.
Yeah, totally.
So yes, tell me a little bit about yourself, Chiz. So you mentioned that you're a sacrificer for Pulsechain, and then you bridged out. What was the main reason why you bridged out? Was it because of the SEC?
It wasn't because of the SEC, but it was just my sense that Pulsechain was going to struggle. And I saw capital flight. I saw it leaving early. And so I did what I do, which is try to sell tops as opposed to buy tops. And so I sold value into stable coins, and bridged most of it over to Ethereum. So I was holding stable coins when a lot of Pulsechain was going down, just because I sensed that we were going to have a few years of struggle. And it wasn't just the SEC. So personally, I am a lawyer and I understand the regulatory regime here. And when I went into the sacrifice, I cautioned my people to know that there's regulatory risk. And so when it happened, or before it happened, I sort of, I didn't get fully out. I kept my moon bags of Atropa and pDAI and Bear and Pulse and PulseX, but I migrated out and decided to go into the fair DeFi launches on Ethereum, mostly in the TitanX ecosystem. And so I didn't put all of my assets, but I put a good portion of what I brought out of Pulsechain into TitanX, and I liked it because of the fair launch, and I liked a few of the protocols that have grown out of it, and this initiative of us coming back to Pulsechain grew out of one of those protocols. Yeah.
Okay. And did you end up doing quite well over on Ethereum?
Yeah, I mean, I think price-wise, nobody's really done well, or I'm not a trader, right? And so price-wise, and dollar value-wise, no. But in terms of accumulation of assets, yeah, I've done very well. And so that's the game that I play, which is you buy low or you get in early and you accumulate conviction plays, right? Things that I believe in. And so that's why when I'm bridging back, so basically out of TitanX, I feel like I've done really well with Ouroboros, right? I don't know if you've heard, Ouroboros is an amazing, it's a borrowing and lending protocol in essence, but it's a banking on the blockchain yield platform, and it's a undiscovered gem. And it's in the stablecoin space. So any Ouroboros, I feel like I've done really well to use my TitanX to get into protocols like Ouroboros. And it also enabled me to bridge assets back to Pulsechain so that I'm bridging my TitanX assets and then pairing them in the LP web that we're building, basically.
Okay, so I mean, I know TitanX was what's his name? That was Jake, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and I know that I'm completely open to any project wherever people go and they make money. It really
Right.
it's entirely up to them. I know that there was all this controversy around it when this happened, and people talking about, oh, the value's getting taken out of Pulsechain, but now we're talking about value starting to come back into Pulsechain. So first of all, now TitanX, big ecosystem. TitanX is one coin, and then there's like a network of coins created around it, and they have their own kind of like established liquidity web over there. Is that kind of how it works, or?
It's sort of how it works. There's a built on TitanX ethos, and so TitanX is the core asset, right? It's the core, and there's an omni-chain version of it called X28. Okay, that's the core asset, and then they're a build on TitanX, and it's like a vertical liquidity web. Basically, it's not like the Pulsechain liquidity webs, really, which are more community, indigenous, community-based LP webs, and that's why we're bridging over to be part of the Pulsechain bull run. People like me who are Pulsechain natives are like, okay, just like I read the tea leaves that, oh boys, we're going to suffer on Pulsechain for like 2 years. I didn't know it was going to be 4 years or whatever it is, but I knew the suffering was coming. And so I bridged out, I sort of protected my assets, and now I'm bridging back a portion of it that I want exposure to Pulsechain, right? And so on TitanX, there's probably like 30 projects.
Okay.
Only a few utilities, though. Why don't you go to ORX?
So like ORX TitanX or
Yeah,
or
exactly. Right. Now, if you go to Ouroboros, and if you go to their website.
Okay. So just so I'm clear in my mind, so basically all of these, they're not interconnected with each other through a web. They're just kind of like basically just one token with TitanX, and that's kind of the extent of it, or will it have
well, they're all in a bonded liquidity web. Okay, and Jake got a lot of his concepts from Richard, right?
Okay.
From Maria, the Atropa dev, and from PTGC, right? And so a lot of these ideas that have been were born on Pulsechain, the developers have now integrated into the TitanX, build on TitanX ecosystem. So Ouroboros is one protocol that grew out of TitanX. It got incubated because TitanX aspires to be a layer one on the layer one, and it aspired to be a builder's platform, and I think that worked. In crypto, though, it's like to really survive and thrive, you've got to be off the charts, super amazing, and ORX is one of those gems. Okay, now. The thing that brought us back was EROS. Okay, EROS is a PTGC clone. Okay, EROS, if you go to EROS on Pulsechain, it's the burn baby burn. It's EROS on Pulsechain, the burn baby burn contract. There you go. Now, if you go to the EROS bear pair, why don't you go to the EROS bear pair? 'Cause since that's the one that we've adopted.
Okay, so teddy bear, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you say we, who is the we? So there's obviously a
Okay.
community of.
Yeah, so this is part of the interesting story. So there's a guy, his name is Peter. He's an Australian guy also. I've never met him, but I communicate, and our team, our community, it's not a community takeover. It's a community readoption of our contract that got airdropped to us. Okay. So 10,000 TitanX liquid holders over a year ago got an airdrop of a PTGC clone called EROS. Okay. It's this contract. And there's a guy named Peter who's a DeFi LP master, right? Who's also a TitanX whale, who really dreamed up this idea of reclaiming the EROS web and migrating value to partner and pair with strength. And because he's into pDAI and Atropa and Bear, and so was I, it was a natural sort of click. And so he recruited people like me and then others to say, hey, let's take this contract back. Let's migrate value. Let's pair with strength. And about 10 weeks ago, that's what we started to do. So the we is a pretty small group. I mean, it's about 20 actual, I would say, active buyers. And it's a diamond hand group, and we've been buying the EROS token and bringing, and that's on Pulsechain, but we've been bridging our assets over and then pairing in the Pulsechain world. And we've just chosen Bear and pDAI and Atropa to focus on because we like it and that's where we come from. And we see it as pairing with strength. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So basically, again, it's because you're seeing the winds move towards Pulsechain and all this clarity around the SEC and everything that's kind of happening, and the energy that's happening around Pulsechain is basically bringing elements of the community across.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
And we've bridged all 30 TitanX assets. Some of them are very light, right? Some there's not deep, it's early. And so we're right now filling in the liquidity web in areas that people want to, because it's a decentralized community effort. Nobody's in charge. Everybody is free to do what I please, right? It's like no one's going to tell me what to do and how to do it, but we're having a coordinated sort of principled dialogue with each other about how we go about doing it, and what's the culture around the web that we want to create, basically.
Okay, so from your experience on Ethereum and the idea of the web on Ethereum, what incentivizes you to come over to Pulsechain and create a web here as opposed to the Ethereum side?
Yeah, because I mean it's two things. One is that we got airdropped a PTGC clone, like it's fully automated, permissionless, protocol. So it's already on Pulsechain. So that's the first draw, is those of us who received that thought, I want to just do that. Then why build the web on Pulsechain as opposed to Ethereum? A lot of it is, some of it is transaction fees, right? It's very expensive to put in liquidity and to do all these transactions. And so it's way less expensive on Pulsechain. It's not easy. The tech isn't, where it maybe needs to be, but you can do it, right? And it's way less expensive. And more importantly, there's a culture on Pulsechain. There's no culture of community web building on Ethereum, none, and not on Base either. And Pulsechain's the only place that I've seen where there's actually a culture of people who understand, because it grew out of Pulsechain, right? And so Atropa really is the first of the. Now Atropa is a I didn't understand it. I understand more about it. I'd like you to educate me on like the current thinking on the web, because it's when I first saw it, I was like, huh. Like, and so it's a little different because on TitanX we mint our own tokens, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how we do it. And it was interesting. That's why I when I came back to started following you again, I saw you doing this thing about Isekai, I think. And I was like,
Ah,
oh, right. And it was the whole thing about the community minting tokens and part of the, of the pDAI, web. And I thought, that's interesting. That's what I want to follow up on. I want to understand that, because that's what we do on TitanX. We sort of mint our own tokens. Now that it's the blessing of the curse also, honestly, of minting your own tokens, because it creates this unruly inflation, right? In a place where we really want deflationary assets. So so anyway.
okay. Yeah. So what did you understand about the Atropa web when you first got into it? What was it about? What was it about it that intrigued you?
Um, well, the first was, the pDAI narrative from the beginning, that, and the fact that it has survived even with all of the, confluence of attacks and everything. So that's the first thing, is the pDAI narrative. I was like, even I just like the speculative, early on, I like this. It's why I bought it right away, very low, very early. I
Wow.
did, yeah, very early. And I did, I mean, this is the lesson, which is, I didn't have conviction really at this time. I didn't understand it enough, but I liked the narrative. So I bought it very early. And then when DAI and Bear, so what I understood, I bought pDAI, Atropa, and Bear very early. And
Mm-hmm.
I held it until it was like 30 to 45 million dollars, or something. And that's when I started to get out, because I thought, you know what, this is not sustainable. And so what I liked about it, I didn't understand it. I didn't like that it was so centrally controlled and that I couldn't see under the hood, because I've learned in crypto that in order for me to protect my investments, I have to be able to see under the hood and see who's doing what, who's in charge, who owns the tokens, if there's inflation, why, and that's when I lost the narrative. When I started to see all these coins like being, that's when I started honestly selling my Atropa, my pDAI, and my Bear, when I started to see all this inflation, like Treasury bill came out, and then all these other ones came out, and FDIC, and then these fake tokens, and I was like, all right, I'm out. This is like, I don't trust it. And so I like now that this ecosystem has hit a bottom of sorts, just like Pulsechain and just like, TitanX and Ethereum. Everything's hit a bottom, because I don't like it, but I think it's required, because I think it was hyperinflated, by a lot of things, and it sort of had to come down to earth and only build on credible protocols and credible assets and credible teams and credible, messengers of decentralized finance, really.
Okay. Yeah, I think I think a lot of those criticisms are very valid, and particularly around, where was it, the big FUD event, the pDAI FUD event, and Maria flipping out and Atropa tanking, and then Treasury bill getting minted. it got minted up to 1 trillion. These were all like, at the time, honestly, it's kind of difficult when you're someone that talks about it a lot. And from my perspective, I just refused to believe that I'd been studying this thing for over a year and it was going to end the way that it ended. I was like, there's just no way. It doesn't, something about it is like, there's been too many moments while I've been exploring this ecosystem that have just been so profound and synchronistic, and it's like everything is meant to be. It felt like everything was meant to be. So for things to just end that way, I guess I was kind of coping a lot. I was just like, nah, he did it because of this, and really trying to defend Maria's actions. And but to be perfectly honest, from an outsider's perspective, I can really see how people can really lose their faith, and the amount of tokens that were being created. And I mean, now with Fed and FDIC and all the tokens that are getting minted, I can see how people would lose their faith. I really can. And I think it's just one of the things that I've always kind of accepted with the Atropa ecosystem, that it's kind of like there's almost in my mind that Maria would have some kind of master plan in his mind about generally where it's headed. But along the way, there's all this experimentation that happens and kind of figuring out the different kind of directions or trajectories that the Atropa ecosystem could take whilst heading towards that general direction. So I think it's been like something that I've always just tried to maintain positivity and, okay, so it's going to work out eventually. And I mean, yeah, it's been certainly.
I think, well, what I'll tell you is that that's what it takes, is the deep believers who understand enough to make a conviction play and to talk about it and to educate others, even if you're not certain, right? And so for me, I didn't actually lose faith, okay? Because I sensed, it's why I held stuff, and it's why I immediately came back. I didn't lose faith. What I lost was conviction in my investment. Like, as an investment, I thought, oh, I need to protect it, put it in stable. That was it. And
Gotcha.
So I protected it, I put it in stable, and then at the right time, when it hit bottom, because I knew it, I knew based on seeing these sort of inflationary systems and all of the hyper speculation attached to it, I knew it. It just had to come down. But I didn't lose conviction, because what I believed from the beginning, and I don't know if this is true, it's just what I believed, is that the Atropa dev, Maria and Richard, are in at the very least, a code dance, okay? They are collaborating, okay? They are, and just, I don't know the extent of the collaboration, but it's a cross-chain collaboration. It's Ethereum, Pulsechain. The bridge is there for a reason. It's a little clunky and people aren't loving it, but I love it. Right? It was given to me as I think it's amazing. It's a tool, if you know how to use it, to bridge assets. And I think one of the interesting things that we might see happening, just like we're bridging asset from TitanX to create scarcity on Ethereum. The reason why we're doing it is create scarcity for our assets on Ethereum, so that when the bull cycle happens, there's less sellers, there's more scarcity, and we get access to a new thriving leveraged ecosystem, Pulsechain and Atropa. So we're doing this to get the leverage of TitanX on Ethereum plus Pulsechain plus Atropa, right? And the pDAI and Bear, right? And so that's why we're doing it. And I think we might see Maria and Richard bridging, because pDAI, right? If this pDAI narrative to a stable coin, I consider it huge speculation right now, but I'm okay. I'm betting on it, right? I'm betting on it again, because I'm like, why not? right? I mean, even if it doesn't end up being a stable coin, at this point, the narrative is enough as a speculative play for me to like reinvest in it at these levels, right? But if it's true that it's a stable asset that is truly censorship resistant, and it's going to want to be on multiple blockchains. It's not just going to want to be on Pulsechain. And so I could see Maria and Richard bridging over assets like we're doing, bridging over assets to create scarcity. It's one of the things that I think is happening, is that they're creating scarcity by bridging over assets they're creating scarcity on Pulsechain. And also beginning to set up the idea that there's going to be a multi-chain future for these assets.
Yeah, I've heard theories of like, I mean, I don't know how true these are, but say for like FDIC and the tokens on the spine, that they are on the Ethereum side, and basically people are talking that you can bridge the assets across without actually going through the bridge. And I don't fully understand how this is, and I don't understand their explanation, but these are some of the things that I've been hearing. And on the pDAI front now as well, 99 Capital, he did a big tweet probably maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours ago, basically saying, and I knew this was going to happen as well. I knew this was going to happen. The ESM, so the ESM that got called by the surfacing and caddy, that quote unquote ended MakerDAO, a portion of it did get ended. So you can't access the VAT anymore. And he said, yep, that's what the ESM did. And the people who didn't end up bidding for control of PMaker to basically prevent this from happening, they allowed it to happen because they saw that if this happens, then it's going to unlock these things for like P compound and P Arve. And I was reading the tweet and I was just like, fuck. I just knew, like, there was a big part of me that like I want to keep the hope alive as well. We're going to $1. I want to keep that alive, but I don't want to be like irrational. If people that I trust are saying it's dead, the ESM is called, you can't use it anymore, then it's like, okay, all right, they're smarter than I am. That's what they're saying. This is what's happened. Let's not like pour that into people's false hope. Let's not give people false hope. But there was also a part of me that was like, is this really dead? Is this really dead? Too much has gone on for all of this to just die like this. That was also my feeling. So I thought there's got to be something more to it. So
look, this is where it's all speculation at this point, unless right. It's and as long as people know that it's a speculative asset, and that's really until this is a non-traditional approach to building an asset, and it's this whole thing. And Richard started it, right? He created the P class. It's basically going from an ERC20 to a PRC20, right? And that's the bridge action. If you think about it, so if you think about the bridge action and what actually happens, and this is why people can bypass the bridge, because you don't have to go through that bridge, but the action is you turn it from an ERC20 to a PRC20 and then back. And the Pulsechain bridge does that by bringing it into the bridge wallet, right? And then minting a PRC20, right? And you can go back and forth. And so that's one of the original gifts of Pulsechain as the mirrored chain for Ethereum. Now, it hasn't fully kept up to date. It's not 100% a mirror, but I believe that over time, now that it's not under the regulatory regime and the attacks, now, Richard and team will be more free, literally, to upgrade the infrastructure so that it can really keep up, technologically with the competition.
Yeah. And we also have tools to, like, going to the Treasury system, for example. You mentioned this earlier, and it triggered something in my mind. I was having a conversation with my friend today. So, the Treasury system. So, the concept behind the Treasury system and ICHIDAI is, as one example, there was one particular whale that burned 137 million pDAI to mint ICHIDAI. Now, that ICHIDAI and pDAI are interchangeable in the liquidity pool. So he's burnt his pDAI, which has reduced the supply of the pDAI, which is bullish for price action, but he's minted out another new token, which has the equal value, which you can end up swapping back into his pDAI if he really wants to. But in the end, like, is he ever going to need 137 million? Probably not. So he's still got $137 million of assets if it ever gets to $1 in the ICHIDAI. And the interesting thing that, I mean, my friends and I were always trying to like speculate on these things, but one of the things we were thinking about, even for something like TitanX now, you could make TitanX as the TitanX from Ethereum, for example. Where was it? So you could make TitanX from Ethereum, bridging it across to Pulsechain, and make that, I don't actually know if this works, I'm assuming it will, but say TitanX from Ethereum, make that the parent to a child token, and let's just say you make Lil Baby TitanX, and then Lil Baby TitanX, let's just say you do a V3 minter, which a V3 minter is basically, first of all, what's the total supply of TitanX, just out of curiosity?
Well, it's a mining token, right? And so it's got inflationary and deflationary. So TitanX probably isn't. I think we can do this. Let's do this with EROS, because EROS is Pulsechain native. So why don't we look at the EROS contract? Or why don't we look at the EROS teddy bear chart? Yeah. Okay. So also we could look at, yeah.
That, just 1 second. Let me just finish this train of thought with TitanX. So
okay, TitanX.
assuming you can. So TitanX from Ethereum. So then you're bridging that across. You're burning the supply to mint Lil Baby TitanX. And then if Lil Baby TitanX, if the liquidity pools in the community design it in such a way that Lil TitanX has the biggest liquidity pool with something that's moving fast on Pulsechain, let's say, for example, like pDAI, which seems to be the fastest moving asset on Pulsechain, or Atropa, for example, and that's the biggest liquidity pool, then there's always going to be a premium on the Pulsechain side. So TitanX TitanX from Ethereum on Pulsechain side, because the price of Lil Baby TitanX is going to get dragged up against Atropa, it's also going to drag up TitanX from Ethereum price, which makes it valuable to bridge your asset across, dump your TitanX from Ethereum into the liquidity pool, and you can bridge out if you want, or you can stay. So I was like, fuck, that would be such a good way of like bringing value from Ethereum onto Pulsechain. I don't know if you can make them parent tokens, but I'm assuming that you can. But anyway, I just wanted to finish that.
If you, I guess the question for you is, can you use any PRC20 to be a parent token, and why would we want to do that? What's the benefit of creating the parent and the child token? Like, why do that?
Yeah, so it's basically about interchanging value and reducing supply. So even when I think about something like Hex, so if the Hex community gets behind this idea, so at the moment, what is destroying the Hex price chart? Hex sellers. And so Hex sellers are destroying the chart by selling their Hex. But if they instead burn their Hex and mint a different token for it, which is interchangeable for their Hex, it's kind of like creating a liquidity pool that you could put those two tokens together, which becomes a yield-bearing asset. So it's something that generates yield rather than something that you sell against, which, of course, Hex might not be necessarily a good example because it's a yield-bearing asset anyway. But it's also burning supply, which is bullish for price momentum. So when you have less of those tokens in circulating supply, then it pumps a lot faster, which is something that we've learned a lot within the Hex and Pulsechain community. Less tokens that are in circulation, it will pump more. So it's bullish for price. So that's one of the things that you could do. And also, obviously, in relation to the TitanX, for example. Even if it's not TitanX, any asset from Ethereum, if you were to do that, and you can manipulate the liquidity structure to make the value of the token higher on the Pulsechain side to incentivize arbitrage across the chain. So it brings value from Ethereum onto Pulsechain.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. It is what we're doing when we're bridging assets over and putting them into Pulsechain pairs. It's what we're doing because we believe that there are going to be price differentials, and it creates the arbitrage not only on chain but across chain. And as we're doing it, we're also starting to see the power of the bots, right? Because the bots are really very active on Pulsechain, and right, it's true freedom. And the bots are also free on Pulsechain, and they're playing the game, especially the bots that are paying attention to the bridge wallets, right? It wakes up the bots, and so those of us who are aware of the Pulsechain prices of our assets and the Ethereum are definitely playing the arbitrage game.
Yeah, got you. So just on this one from Pulsechainer, how is it burning if you can claim it back later? So it depends which of the minters that you created on. So you can claim it back, but if you create like a V4 minter, then with the V4 minters, so with ICHIDAI, for example, it would have started at a 1-to-1 burn with pDAI, but now it's like 1,137 pDAI to 1 ICHIDAI. So you would never swap your pDAI, like you would never swap the minted ICHIDAI back for the pDAI because it's worth so much more now. So it depends on the minter that you use. So you can use it for that kind of example with like the V3 ones where it's like 1.1 billion before it ends up scaling up to another like the next multiplier factor. So that is something where you can create more of like a stable value by bonding the token. So there's just different kind of options and interesting things. So I don't fully understand, like I'm just learning about it as of the last few weeks. So I don't fully understand it, but these are just the things that I speculate with my friends, and we have these discussions about what the potential of it is. And each time we talk, we're like, oh, it could be like, it could do this, or it could be something where, for example, in a bear market, everybody's dumping the hex. Well, if you've got hex in a liquidity pool with this other token, and they're like 1-to-1, and hex is dumping, but nobody knows about this other token, then you can buy the hex back up with your other token, which you've burnt 1-to-1, but now you've got a premium in the bear market, so you're going to accumulate more hex. And that's also going to like buffet the downside pressure. So there's all these different like mechanics that we're starting to see emerge. And like as we have these discussions with my friend, I'm like, oh man, that's epic. That's epic. And it's clear in my mind about certain different things, but how it will actually work in reality is completely different. Like I don't actually fully know how it's going to work in reality, but conceptually it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that for Pulsechainer there. So it's burnt technically, but minted as a copy later. So technically you're right. Yes, that's correct. And I believe regardless, you can just claim them back. But like I said, when it comes to the V4 ones, you would never want to claim it back because you're better off swapping it because of the rates that you get. So yes.
So basically that self-minting approach is to create scarcity of the base asset and then transform it into something else that you can then create a sort of a fee sharing opportunity because you put it into the LP web and it generates fees. Is that it?
That's one option. So that's why it's like such an interesting thing, because yes, that's one idea. Basically burn and then mint, put them into a liquidity pool, then you've got a yield-bearing asset. So if I can make a yield-bearing asset out of my teddy bear, for example, you can make a yield-bearing asset out of your teddy bear. You could obviously also make it a yield-bearing asset by bonding it with Atropa or pDAI and generating value through that. So, but obviously this would be like you could make it a one-to-one yield bearing asset, so there's like less risk of impermanent loss or whatever. For example, that's just one way that you could do it. It could be something at a community level, which could buffet the downside of a bear market. At a community level, you can also basically incentivize cross-bridge arbitrage. At a community level, you can also incentivize like what MatrixDAI is trying to do, with trying to incentivize people to burn pDAI. And today, I believe they got up to was it 5,555,555 MXDAI. So that means that amount of pDAI has been burnt now into that contract. So just all these different ideas and the way that the community, through their own creativity and explorations, can do. So it's like the tools are there, and now it's really up to us to see what we can actually do with the tools. And these are just some of the speculations that we're starting to have. And I have mentioned it a few weeks ago that I do want to do like a community stream where anyone can jump on and we can start to speculate about different kinds of things that you can do with the Treasury system, and what have you done with your community, and what are we doing with our community, and what kind of things are we thinking about, and just kind of making like a little think tank around it. So it's kind of just like a tool that we're all just learning how to use, really. So yeah, the yield bearing asset is just one of many kind of use cases that I can see.
I think what would be helpful, when I saw you starting to look at the front end, like the front ends to help newcomers, like just to get a look at it, to sort of be able to, I think the front end is the thing that can help, to sort of begin the experimentation process. Because if there is a front end, that's clear and helpful, then people can, educate self, figure out, without overcommitting and without even connecting wallet, being able to sort of study something, in a safe way before jumping in is probably really important. Just as a sort of a welcome to newcomers, so that, because like even with when I saw you talking about ICHIDAI, right, that one, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I liked it. I immediately, because I was like, I liked it just because it was community. It was just people deciding to do something. It was true DeFi, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And I that's why I was like, all right, cool. Now it's not like I looked at the speculative play and I was like, nah, it's too speculative, but I like that people are doing it. Right. And then I thought, okay, in order for me to really study, I'd have to be vested enough in the ecosystem, which is why, now that I'm beginning to, right, I'm reinvesting in through EROS into Bear, right? Bear EROS. I'm heavily committed again, right? And this is what's cool about the EROS web, is we get to pair with who we want, because it's community created LP web, right? And so we've all created this EROS teddy bear pair. And one thing I just want to clarify about the EROS contract. Whatever you see on Dex Screener is informationally not fully correct. It's not really reading the blockchain 100% on Dex Screener. And because there's no one in charge of it, let me just point you to one thing. So the market cap is 1.1 million on Dex Screener. That's based on a 333 billion supply. If you go to the contract, if you want to go to the contract, if you go down, it's the same supply, because it's a fork of PTGC. So if you go to the EROS holders, why don't we go to EROS holders? See, so we don't really know. This is the contract, 62 CF. It's revoked, verified. It was dropped to us, and if you look at the holders, there's 10,000. Okay, that's because there are 10,000. This is the amazing thing about EROS, that people really, if you look under the hood, so it's crazy well distributed, but mostly dead wallets. Most of these are wallets that haven't been opened ever. It got airdropped to 10,000 liquid holders on Ethereum. Most Ethereum users don't use Pulsechain. There's a small group of us that have woken up and said, hey, I've got EROS on the Pulsechain side of because I got this airdrop, I'm going to start using it. So the thing in terms of the supply, yeah, and that's the secret of EROS, is that even though it's a 330 billion supply, there's probably 50 billion in circulation right now. Right, exactly. And it's hyper deflationary. So if you look at the number 2 wallet here, this is what I like about this. Look at the number 2. Now the number 1 wallet, and part of the reason why I decided to say yes to participating in this, that number 1 wallet is this guy Peter. He's the biggest holder. Now he bought way back when. If you look at the chart, he bought way back when. Now he's been accumulating that now also, but the second wallet is the buy and burn wallet. Okay, so 2.43% of the total supply has been burned just by automated buying and burning. Now it's like PTGC; it's a 5% fee in and fee out. But it's a little different because 2% of the 5% goes to the buy and burn wallet, 1% goes to the LP with Pulse, and then 2% is the fee sharing part of it. And so it's a fee sharing protocol like PTGC. It's basically it's a fork of PTGC that has no DAO and no treasury. It's got no people in charge. It's fully permissionless. And so all we're doing is we're using it and we're building a web around it, connecting Pulsechain and TitanX. And because it's very well distributed, we're building a culture of people here that we're not interested in pump and dump. What we're interested in is buying at the bottom. So the $1 million market cap is wrong. I just use, I don't know, maybe a third of it, maybe a third of the supply will ever be live. So 100 billion, maybe. But until someone writes a script and tells us like where are the dead wallets and which ones are waking up, I've been trying to wake people up to say, hey, you got a nice, valuable airdrop. Look, we've come off the bottom. We are reviving this contract. And really, that's what we're doing. We're reviving TitanX protocols that have suffered and this EROS contract that, pumped and then dumped.
Okay, so obviously there's a bit of just like everything in crypto, there's going to be some criticisms and some warning signs, and obviously do your own research. And some people are saying that EROS was it was something that was on Ethereum, but it was a scam. So it apparently not such a great name. And obviously UFO to go
the contracts. Yeah, totally.
Have a look at the contract. So obviously there's all of that. There is all of that, and that kind of just goes without saying. So, but what I find interesting, what sparked my mind up instantly as you were talking about it, is the fact that, because I'm always thinking from the perspective of the Atropa ecosystem, and well, not always, but from the perspective of like how this, like Maria describes the Atropa ecosystem as almost like a living organism, and he's described it as like this planet that continues to grow. And so when I think of something like this, which has this airdropped token, which is got an automatic buy and burn to it, and basically a community now who's seen it. And let's say out of this 10,000 holders, there's only like 1% of you here, or maybe there's only 100 here, but 100 people now have come along and given it life. So there's 24,000 in liquidity, and UFO to go. I saw this comment before as well. So that there's just not a lot of liquidity in these, and that's fine, but it's a starting point. And the arbitrage, like that's the beauty of Pulsechain now. You could walk away for the next 10 years and you come back, nobody sells anything, and you come back and all of this, the value of all of this will probably continue to rise. That's the real beauty of the Pulsechain arbitrage bots, because everything is so cheap. And so the fact that there's a community now who's come along and they've seen this potential and they're plugging it into the Atropa ecosystem, which is giving it life, which is connecting it to the R bots, it's just such an epic idea to me. It's so awesome because if it's only a tiny percentage, that's what can wake people up. If this was something that was airdropped to all these Ethereum users, that can wake them up and go, one day they'll wake up and go, holy shit, I've got this token over on Pulsechain that's worth like a few $100 and I didn't even know it was there. And what is this Pulsechain? And then they're going to come along and start learning about it. And what's Teddy Bear? What's the Atropa ecosystem? What's pDAI? What's WPLS? Like, they're going to start to learn about it. What's UFO? That's the things that I find fascinating and very, very interesting as an onboarding tool. Like, what this actually means. It's a really interesting concept. So
I mean, part of it is 100 people bridging value for Pulsechain means a lot, actually. And like people are saying, better view the contract. Absolutely. And like the contract's been operating for over a year, right? And so a lot of times in these in permissionless systems, right? It's up to us. It's up to me. I'm going to use the contract only after I've kicked the tires, and it's been operating for a year. And I would invite anybody to go check it out, right? That's the idea. That's what we do. And I think your point is important, which is that there's an opportunity on Pulsechain that sometimes people who are Pulsechain native forget, right? That it really is designed. This guy looks like Cash Money.
I think you look like Cash Money.
Who's Cash Money?
Oh, Cash Money. Cash Money's what would we call him? We'd call him like the pDAI. Oh, I don't know. He's just like the pDAI prophet. He just burst.
I love that.
My channel one day, and he was just like, yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, I'll be Cash Money's bro. What was I saying? Oh yeah. But the idea is, right? This is a valuable contract. It's a protocol like PTGC on Pulsechain, right? Just that's the first idea, right? The second idea is it's now backed with a community, even though it's small. People are like, oh, the liquidity is small. I'm like, exactly, it's early, right? And that's the idea. And so not everything will be deep liquidity, but in a liquidity web that's buying and burning the core asset, EROS, that's fine, as long as people understand that there will be some deep liquidity pools. And that's why we really wanted to focus on Bear. That's why Bear is our biggest pool, because we've got, and that is the question. That's, if you could educate me and us on if there, because I remember hearing that Teddy Bear was more than just a meme, that there's a utility, that there's a role for Teddy Bear in the ecosystem. And that's what I'm curious about. Like, what is the role of Teddy Bear? Because like, that's the one that I've been reaccumulating, right? Because I love Teddy Bear. I was part of Teddy Bear's revival because I was buying the bottom, right? I was like, all right, I'm reaccumulating Teddy Bear and going to pair it with EROS. So talk to me a little bit about Bear. Like, why do we love Bear so much?
So Teddy Bear backs the Treasury. So Treasury bill, and Treasury bill is basically in Maria's Amsterdam presentation. Treasury bill has a price target of $1. So I suppose Treasury bill is considered to be what would be the stable coin, or like the US dollar stable coin of the Atropa ecosystem. And so the Teddy Bear backs that. So Teddy Bear backs the Treasury. So from a utility perspective, that's what its utility is. Beyond that utility, I can't say any more than that. What I do know is just recently it has had like a ton of supply burnt. By recently, I mean maybe 2 months ago when the whole pDAI FUD happened. I believe, like, it used to be the Shiba Inu circulate. It used to have the Shiba Inu supply, and now it has like I don't know. There was like 20% of the supply that got burnt or something like this. So yeah, Teddy Bear has just always been special because of that, and also it's just from a memeable point of view, it's always been like the primary meme within the Atropa ecosystem, and it's something that Maria does streams on, and we're trying to establish trust in teddy bears, and so it's almost like it's going to be the face of the Atropa ecosystem in the future. That's how I feel about it. So
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, that's why I like it, because I like teddy bears in general. Like on the planet, teddy bears are a good thing. They're not a problem, right? We want to encourage teddy bears, right? And that's the first thing. But if I know, like, talk to me about, like, what does it mean to back the Treasury bill? And I'm actually, someone else said to me, we're going to be building a Treasury EROS pool also. So that's because, people who are studying the ecosystem say, hey, so what we're doing is we're pairing with strength. These are the things that we think are going to do well, right? And so it's pDAI, Atropa, Bear, and now Treasury is what we're going to focus our attention on in our pairing with EROS, because we want to pair that with things that, that we like and that we think are going to do well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely good choices. So what does it mean to back the Treasury bill? Honestly speaking, I can't say with conviction I know the answer to that. But for me, it's kind of like the deepest connection point between, it's almost like so you've got the Treasury system now, which is like this whole sector of the Atropa ecosystem, but it started with the V1 Treasury bill minters, and then obviously you have Fed, which is connected to Treasury bill. Then you have the spine, and so Treasury bill as the $1 asset, it's kind of like it's this sector of the Atropa ecosystem, and then the Atropa ecosystem has like different sectors within it, and Teddy Bear is the thing that connects it with this part of the liquidity of the Atropa ecosystem, and this part of the liquidity with the Atropa ecosystem. So between Treasury bill and Teddy Bear, it's like the link between these two sectors. That's how I kind of think about it.
All right, good. So in my mind then, and I'm glad, it becomes like the core asset. It's like the central core asset that sort of things revolve around on both sides of the ecosystem. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, that's how I think about it. Correct. That's how I think about it. But of course, when Maria said that, whatever that was, like over a year ago in the chat logs, that Teddy Bear backs the Treasury bill, and more, I mean, people should take how I interpret things as a grain of salt, because I've often been wrong about things that I've interpreted, thinking that this is what Maria meant, but it was completely way off or just totally misunderstanding. And it could very simply just be also as simple as like, I could go to, I mean, honestly, these days, this is what I do. I'll literally go to ChatGPT now, and I would say, what does it mean for one asset to back a stable asset? And then this would be my answer if I had a little bit more time. I'd say this. So in simple terms, when one asset backs a stable asset, it means the value of the stable asset is supported or guaranteed by holding that backing asset as collateral or reserve. So then, think of it like this. Imagine you create a stable coin. Let's say it's Treasury bill, and you want it to peg to $1. You could back it with Teddy Bear. So you hold $1 worth. So basically, it's basically just like how pDAI would be backed by USDC and all the other different assets within MakerDAO. So it's that kind of principle. So it provides, this is why backing provides trust. In Teddy Bears, we trust. So people are willing to accept that Teddy Bear, probably Treasury bill, stays at $1 because they know there's a real asset behind it that can be redeemed or liquidated if needed. And it's kind of self-evident in the fact that the biggest, two of the three biggest liquidity pools with Teddy Bear are Treasury bill.
And is teddy bear, is it cap supply and deflationary, right?
Well, this is the beautiful thing about it. So yes, it is. It is cap supply. It can't be minted, but it can be continuously burned because of the Treasury system. So Maria has set up like 3 or 4 different Treasury minters, but that's also unlimited, just FYI. As in, I could create my own Treasury minter with Teddy Bear, but actually, I think there's about 5 or 6 with Teddy Bear. I think maybe there's a V3 one, and the rest are like V4 minters. Actually, I think they're all V4 minters, but yeah, there's like 5 or 6 V4 minters, some of which have no like not much liquidity, and some which have a decent amount of liquidity, but basically they're being burnt. And when it's a V4 minter, each time that you burn the starting supply, the amount that's required to burn to get the same amount of tokens increases. So the first burn, maybe it was like 1 teddy bear to I think DARPA. So DARPA is really being which one is it? DARPA. So DARPA teddy bear. That one is being really pushed by Sunny's Pub, for example. So the community's getting behind that. So you see the chart of DARPA and Teddy Bear, and Teddy Bear's being constantly burned against DARPA. So yes, it is deflationary. Teddy Bear is deflationary.
Cool.
Long story short.
I no, this is good, because then, I mean, look, I basically go on, like with speculation, I go on intuition first. Like, what's my intuition? And I've always had a very good intuition about the Atropa ecosystem. I always knew I was like, all right, there's something here. I don't know exactly what it is, but as I've, learned more and more about it, I see what it is. It's a liquidity web. It's been hard for me to see its development. Like, it's not how, as a user, I like to do it. I like to be able to see more transparently but this is just how this ecosystem is being built. And it's sort of this, it's like a secret universe, right? And that's why people like you who have been inside of it for so long are like looking for the clues to the universe, because there's something there. And that's the game, I think, that the developers have set up. And I don't think it's one. This is sort of a coordinated, decentralized effort to build an ecosystem on Pulsechain that is, I believe, intended to be cross-chain also. I think it's intended, just based on the actions that I've been seeing. And there's a lot of projection in the internet, a lot of projection onto actions that sometimes aren't the intentionality. That's why sometimes the developers react. I saw, for example, like Maria reacted to something you said or did, right? And right recently.
Oh, just recently. Yeah.
Right. No, but that's a good example of like the developers who have their own shtick going, right? This is like, they're just humans. These are people, right? And oftentimes responsible for more of other people's assets than they've ever had before. And so, like, I've worked with a lot of startup founders, and I know how startup founders are, and a lot of startup founders struggle with this whole question about, centralization and decentralization. And so anyway, the point here is that this is like an experiment in decentralized financial ecosystem building, and it's almost by definition messy, and it has been very messy, right? But that's part of the beauty. People who appreciate it appreciate the beauty of the chaos, and can find their place in it and not get taken advantage of. But that's why for the ecosystem, I think it's going to be very important to, in the next stage of development, to attract new capital, and new users are going to have to make like what is very hard to understand very simple. Like, you just made it simple for me. Now I know, okay, there's a reason why Teddy Bear exists in the ecosystem. The reason is it's backing Treasury bill. Great. Now I know why someone who's been studying says, oh, I want Treasury bill in the ecosystem. And now I know why we're going to connect. And that for me is very important, because then the speculation has credibility. And even if it's just speculation, there's some credible speculation about it. So anyway, I like what you guys are doing. I really do.
I like that. I like what you just explained there about like simplifying it as well, because it's helpful for me as well, because I almost feel like you know, because I'm one of the only people that are talking about it, and
yeah,
you know, people often just think I'm the expert, and I guess in some ways I am the Atropa expert, but I still
well, but this is the beauty. And hold on, let's remember this, because just a suggestion, focus on pDAI, PWBTC pools. That's a good idea. I'd like to focus there. That's a really good idea, because but before we do that, I think that like it's why every ecosystem needs outsiders. Like, because outsiders can see stuff that insiders can't see. And so that's why the outsider mind, I aspire to being an outsider in life, honestly. I mean, this is just sort of what I've realized is my role, is to be an outsider that can sort of see into things and treat whatever it is with the dignity and respect that it deserves. But I come in with an outsider's perspective that says, hey, educate me, teach, because I don't get it. You know, I'm like an alien in your world. Teach me. And that's why, for me, making this ecosystem so simple, right? Now, that's why the next phase, and this is why I believe, only because I've been following this long enough, I believe that there is a synchronization between what Richard Hart is doing and what the Atropa dev is doing. I don't think it's random. I don't think it's random. I don't think it's fully coordinated, but I do believe that there's an integration of efforts, and that's part of my belief system. I built that in to it, because otherwise, like, the chaos wouldn't make sense to me. I'd be like, why are they doing this? What is going on? And I think what's been going on is, and I don't like this about these decentralized networks, but I think what's been going on, they've been shaking people, not people necessarily, but they're shaking out all the riffraff. They're shaking out all of the sort of the people that don't believe that Richard and Maria are building a viable economic system. Okay. I actually believe that. I do. I believe that. It's why I'm reinvesting even some time and capital in it. You don't have to believe everything, but I do believe that, and this is why I like investing back in Atropa, because I'm like, okay, this is very early stage. I'm like coming back into the speculative play. And I think what we're going to see is more discipline from the top. I think we're going to see more discipline now that, look, Richard Hart is going to be Richard Hart. Maria is going to be Maria, but these are the two critical builders in the ecosystem, that the whole ecosystem, and this is what I understand as an outsider, understanding leaders. When those two, plus let's say PTGC, which I see as the other core, like they're like three cores that I see in Pulsechain as an insider outsider that I'm like, okay, I can rely on at least a little bit. You know, one is like, now that I know that Richard Hart is free from SEC scrutiny, there's a reason why he's coming out talking again. There's a reason, like his lawyers have said, Richard, after July 5th, you're free from all of these attacks. You know how powerful that is? And that's why we really should talk about Rekt, BTC, and PRET. All of the P tokens, I think, become way more relevant now. And I also believe that P tokens and Pulse Chain tokens bridging back to Ethereum is going to be a thing.
Interesting. So, okay, so first of all, you mentioned your belief that you think that they might not necessarily be working together, but there's some sort of like coordination. And then you said discipline from the top. What did you mean by discipline from the top? What is that?
Well, so Pulsechain is designed to be a decentralized network, meaning that there's like 50,000 decentralized nodes, right? Validator nodes. So from a validation node perspective, it's very decentralized.
Mm-hmm.
From the perspective of ownership and control, it's very centralized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just part of the dynamic that anyone who invested in Pulsechain understands.
Mm-hmm.
Richard always said it. He said, this isn't about there's decentralization of the network, but don't you want centralized ownership? And I'm like, not really, but I'm willing to accept it now that I know it. And so that requires an enlightened owner. It's been very hard for Richard. I think this is my personal opinion. He baited with how he designed the airdrop. I mean, how he designed the sacrifice. When, as a lawyer, when I read the document that I had to sign, I was like, oh, he's setting it up as an affirmative defense against the attack. It's very smart. And his lawyers set it up for him that way. It was set up so that people like me had to sign a release saying, I get it. This is for freedom of speech. This is for freedom of assembly. I get it. There is no expectation of profit from the work of another, right? He set it up. He baited them because he knew. He saw what the SEC was doing after going after Do Kwon. He saw that with Pulsechain, and he set the sacrifice up to, I believe, to get them to attack him legally so that he could defend these principles legally. And it's why he didn't settle. It's why he didn't settle. And as someone like me following it, I was like, damn, he's like all out. He's going to win over time if you understand that the system of attacks was really unjustified. It was really a regulatory overreach. And I think this is what Richard and his lawyers understood. And so when I talk about discipline from the top, what I'm saying is that Pulsechain got interrupted, literally and legally, for like years. And now that it's free, Richard, I think he and his team, you're going to see way more freedom to transact, to interact, to lead. And I think it's part of the reason why Richard is going back to what he knows best. Like, he's a marketing guy, right? And it's why he's starting to talk about, direct marketing again. And it's why he's starting to talk about onboarding, and asking people. It's because he's going back to his roots, because now he's feeling more free, right? Because he's free with the capital. Before, like, all the sacrifice capital was tied up. Now the capital is freed up by the centralized owners of the capital to do what he pleases, basically. And some people don't like that in the decentralized world, but as an investor, I knew that. I knew that that's what I was investing in.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, you genuinely think, you don't think he set it up just as a potential that they might attack him in so he could have the right kinds of defenses. You think he actually baited them with the way that you read it?
I mean, that's how I read the sacrifice, as like an affirmative defense. I didn't see that as a bait. I saw the sacrifice as setting it up as a legal affirmative defense. That's the first thing. So I think he and his lawyers knew that you're a potential target. His lawyers probably said, Richard, you're a potential target. And then he was like, what do we do? And they said, do it right. And here's how you do it. I think the place where maybe he baited them was when he was doing his, because I was like, Richard, what are you doing? Like all the outrage marketing and buying all this high. I think they baited him. And if you looked at the complaint, if you look at the allegations, it's about fraud. It's not just about a security. It's about an allegation of fraud and mismanagement of funds. That was the bait, where he was like, I'm going to go buy, Rolexes and all my gear. That was the bait, because and that's what they put in the complaint. They put all that stuff, and I was like, oh man, and they took the bait, and I was like, he's got an affirmative defense. They don't understand what's going on under the hood. Richard Hart is not using these funds. He's using his private funds, and he's baiting them. And I didn't like the outrage marketing. In fact, I disdained it. I didn't like it at all. I was like, ugh. I was like, all the people that I brought in were like, why did you do this to us? And I was like, it's on me, bro. I'm sorry. I was like, and so, but the lawyer in me knew also, honestly, knew that there was an affirmative defense, and the outrage marketing was the bait. And I think that is, once I saw that happening, and once I was like, my brother who asked me, he was like, bro, why would he be doing this? And at the time I said, he's baiting them. He's baiting them. And I think he was. Personally, this is what I believe, because sure. I think he's smarter than the regulators, honestly. And I think his lawyers are better. And the regulators were out of line and overstepping their regulatory authority.
I mean, it just makes me love the guy even more if that was the case. I think it's probably like a dual thing, as in it was a marketing element that he realized this is what's going to get eyeballs to the chain, and then also probably a double hit of like going after the regulators in a way and baiting them.
But honestly, but the marketing, if like Richard is the marketing guy, that marketing did not get new users, because all of the new users were people like me who went into the sacrifice. I was a Hex person, and I saw Richard's marketing, and I was like, I want Pulsechain. I need Pulsechain, right? That marketing was like after the sacrifice, and all it was designed to frustrate people like me who were like, come on, man, I want a disciplined leader. I want someone who's leading a freaking world-class asset. I don't want a clown, right? But I don't think it was for me. I think it was for the regulators, because as a marketing ploy, it didn't work at all. Or it just turned off his people. But I think he had to do it, honestly. Yeah. That's just my belief.
I mean, if it's true, I just have even more love and respect for him, because, I've been so, I try to accept everybody's opinions and perspectives, and I can see the pain from which people are saying the things that they're saying, but the amount of like disrespect and, oh, Richard's done nothing. I saw a comment today from, I'm not even going to mention the community, but if you're in Pulsechain long enough, you'll know. And they just like, they hashtagged or they atted the FBI. They're like, oh, we know of someone who's doing some like sus things with some shipping containers. And I'm like, you fucking dogs. Like, just because they're so upset that the prices are down, that they would go to this level of like toxicity. It blows me away. It's a very,
but can I just, can I just weigh in on that
Sure.
I mean, look, first of all, the echo chamber, the toxicity is everywhere, right? And
True.
so when there's a public figure, people will project one's own toxicity onto that public figure. So that's the first thing.
Of
The
course.
second thing is that I do believe that the whole ecosystem has been hamstrung by, and I don't blame Richard. I know some people do. It's the same way that people blame Jake over on and project the same way that people project onto Richard's scammer. They project onto Jake's scammer. Jake isn't a scammer. Richard isn't a scammer. These are just, young men growing a little older and doing decentralized finance, and people project all this stuff onto them. That's just how it's set up. And now it's not that so all these projections make a lot of sense to me, but the thing is that in this decentralized finance world, there's really no constructive accountability for the leaders, which tend to be the core builders in the ecosystem. There's almost no constructive accountability, which is the builder's responsibility, to care for it. That's the thing that are the core builder's responsibility, the onus. It's not the blame, but it's the onus to stay in the dialogue with users and investors long enough, to stay in the dialogue so that there's a culture of trust. What Richard couldn't do, that he did for many years with his community, he couldn't do over the last years. He couldn't. Okay. Now, if he could have, I think he would have. I do. Because that's his history. His history is he was a relentless communicator. And then when he got attacked by the SEC and by his own community as a young man, he got hurt. And he started lashing out. Same thing with Jake. Jake got hurt. These attacks, even though they act all tough and the internet doesn't hurt, it does. It does. It hurts people. And that's the thing that people don't realize. All these keyboard warriors, like all the keyboard warriors out here, like, need to check it, because that toxicity towards anybody is unacceptable. Unless there's verifiable truth of fraud and no, we really need to give people the benefit of the doubt until we have verifiable proof. Otherwise, then it just becomes like random toxic spreading, and that's unacceptable in a culture. So anyway, that's just me, having been an outsider, insider in a lot of cultures and communities, and I've learned that that my own toxicity is the only thing I can be responsible for. It's why I would never talk, to you at a, or in any public forum denigrating someone else. I want to separate the people from the problem always, because the people almost are never the problem. It's the collective, like, culture that ends up being the mess almost always with humans.
Yeah, very well said. Before we pivot to this, I want to just comment on Jake, actually, because I know who Jake is, obviously. I don't have much experience with TitanX besides the positive things that I've heard from people and the negative things that I've seen. But the criticism that I heard about him, he DM'd me and tried to sell me a course. I'm like, bro, it's the year 2024. Like, everybody's doing that. And that's just what he was doing to stack the bread. Like, everybody's trying to make money somewhere. This is the internet. I didn't see that like a scamming tactic or creating an ecosystem and taking liquidity away from Pulsechain. I don't see any of that as scamming. I just see that as like people living life and creating things. It's like, so yeah.
No. Jake is a business guy. He DM'd me, and it was a mastermind that I didn't say yes, but he DM'd me, and I had a really nice dialogue with him. I had a Zoom video call. I liked him a lot. We had an hour dialogue, and he's a builder, he's a dev, he's been around the block, and he knows Richard Hart. He hugged Richard. They, and Richard is one of Jake's mentors, right? And so, and he interviewed me, I interviewed him, and I said, I don't want to do this, but thank you, and I'm going to follow you now, right? And so I didn't do his mastermind, but his mastermind was the incubator for the TitanX ecosystem, right? So Dragon X, this guy Eric, who's the builder, was in the mastermind, and a lot of the builders who actually have built on TitanX came out of his mastermind. And so that makes sense, and that's how small private groups can form. Personally, I don't like small private groups. That's not my style, but that's just me. I don't think it's a scam necessarily, and I don't think this is a scam. This is people are not happy with the chart. People are not happy with some of the decisions made. But this is decentralized finance. This is all an experiment, right? And so it's like, this is highly speculative.
Of course. So, yeah, I'm glad to hear that perspective and the clarity on that. So, okay, so pivoting back to this point here. So,
yes.
Obviously, the lads here were talking about. I would actually not necessarily disagree with it, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to make Teddy Bear. I think people have forgotten about Teddy Bear to be not forgotten, but like if you look at a ratio between
why did they think it's a mistake?
I don't think that they said it was a mistake. So all they were saying was
it doesn't have a lot of liquidity or something.
No, so all they were saying is, but EROS is for you're talking about EROS focusing on Teddy Bear as a liquidity pool, the bonding with Teddy Bear,
right?
He was suggesting pDAI and or PWBTC, and UFO to go was in agreement with that. So me personally,
tell us why. Maybe maybe they're right. Like maybe they've got really good intelligence for us. Like, why should we be? And we're open. We're just community people who hold Bear, who hold pDAI, and hold Atropa. And so what else should we be? So talk to us about what we should be pairing with. So wrap BTC, that's a good idea.
I think wrap BTC and pDAI have been the spears for this chain. So basically they run and then everything kind of follows after. So from that perspective, I can understand what they're talking about. But I guess the reason why I would dispute that idea is I feel that obviously if pDAI is ever going to peg, then you have a capped upside. P-wrapped Bitcoin, same thing. It's going to have a capped upside that's going to be associated with Bitcoin, which is, okay, yes, Bitcoin's done all the gains in this particular cycle, but it's done only just a few X's. Teddy Bear, on the other hand, the long-term proposition of Teddy Bear and the upside potential of Teddy Bear is what makes it maybe not necessarily in the short term something that's going to produce the best results, but in the long term, I think Teddy Bear is definitely something that should not be overlooked. I just, again, with the Treasury system, the deflationary, P-wrap Bitcoin can be deflationary, and so can pDAI because of the Treasury system. But yeah, just Teddy Bear, a lot of the supply has been burnt. I just think there's a lot there. And again, the fact that it backs a Treasury bill. So I think that the upside potential of Teddy Bear is higher than pDAI and P-wrap Bitcoin in the long run. Do I think in this particular cycle? Maybe not necessarily. Maybe in this particular cycle, pDAI and P-wrap Bitcoin will outpace Teddy Bear. And I mean, if you have a look at these ratios, they've kind of like locked. It's kind of locked in this range. So it kind of established itself within this particular range. So
yeah, it seems like Teddy Bear has some room to run on the ratio. Actually, so one thing to know about how we pair, it's really the coins that we hold and then we pair them with strength. And so in our community, I know that there are some rep Bitcoin people. And so, right. And there are some pDAI people. And so the pDAI, will pair with EROS people and then the rep Bitcoin. And so this is how we work. But for me, now that I know more about Teddy Bear, I'm even more bullish, honestly, in terms of our choice, because now I see its play. I remembered this. I knew it was that, but I forgot it. I forgot that there was some utility. But now that I see the teddy bear place, and also I like the meme of it, I just think it has huge potential. Now, I guess my question to you is, like, long term, how do you see Atropa? Like, how do you see, like, because I'm a long-term investor. I like to keep assets in the market long-term as opposed to buy and sell. But I will be I will be buying low and selling on the way out, but keeping a percentage of my assets, mostly in LP, in the ecosystem, right? And so I guess my question is, how do you see Teddy Bear, the projection? Let's look at the chart a little bit and look at the ratio, and like, where do you see it going? Not in terms of price, but in terms of this next cycle and then long term. How do you see it?
Look, to be perfectly honest with you, I am not very good at those types of that type of way of thinking.
Okay.
It's not that, like, oh, I don't give price predictions. It's literally that I look at something and I don't know where this is going to end with this particular cycle. So I'm much more kind of, I don't want to say bearish, but more conservative on the upside potential with this particular cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everything on Pulsechain is going to explode, but yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be able to give some sort of like price prediction. I guess
It's more like value accrual. I don't even care about price, honestly. I'm more thinking like, because right now what we've got is a deflationary asset that is worth about, right now the market cap is a $10 million market cap with a deflationary supply that has a central place in the number one liquidity web, other than, actually, maybe it is the number one on Pulsechain. I don't know, PTGC and Atropa Weber.
PTGC basically leverages off the Atropa web. So I mean, PTGC, I love PTGC. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. But Atropa is like, I mean, it even backs things within PTGC. So I think
Right.
it's not a competition.
Right.
They're different. They're
Right.
different.
It's like different webs. And I guess my point is that if we focus on Teddy Bear as a central backing of at least theoretically the Treasury bill, right? If we think about that, I'm like, oh. So I guess my real question is, how do you see? Because now that I see Teddy Bear, I see it growing and falling with the whole Atropa ecosystem, right? And so the question is, where do you see the growth trajectory for Atropa and the pDAI speculation? Like, how do you see that?
Well, obviously, in terms of Atropa itself and pDAI, you can see the charts are pretty much moving in sync. So at the current ratios, what is it? So this is 10 cents, and this is 0.3 of a cent pDAI. So at the current ratios, if we go to the ratios, basically Atropa with its bonding, I still think pDAI is just going to lift the whole thing up. And so at the moment it's 27-1. So there was a point where it was staying reasonably stabilized to around the 750 region. This is something that Maria spoke about as well. So Maria's target was 750 in the Amsterdam speech. So in other words, when pDAI gets to $1, if it pegs to $1, then Atropa should be valued at 750 to one pDAI dollar. So that means one Atropa would be 750. But then that that's what it would be at the $1. So that there is no cap to that. There's no cap. So let's say this does stabilize to something. Let's say Maker gets resurrected and it's $1 and it can never go above or below $1. People can buy Atropa with pDAI, but pDAI will stay fixed. So Atropa's upside potential continues to grow. And Maria has spoken about this. But over time, obviously, it would become like Bitcoin. It's not like something that's just gonna keep exponentially going up and up and up and up. It'll have like a, what is it, the S curve adoption that we see in Bitcoin, where over time there's so much value in there that the upside potential will reduce. I think it's got at least, like, if pDAI peaks within this cycle, I think this would still have another 1 or 2 cycles in it for upside potential with Atropa. And if that's the case, then everything within the Atropa ecosystem would also have the upside potential based on that. And so with something like Teddy Bear, I mean, it's just one of these speculations that I've had with Teddy Bear, but basically, if Teddy Bear backs the Treasury, so if I have a look at some of the pools here, so you've got Treasury Bill, Atropa, Treasury Bill, pDAI, PTGC, Pulsechain, I don't know what this one is, and then James Cook, Bullion, Legal, so on and so forth, USDT, I think, is that Mantissa maybe? This one, TSFI. So there's all these ones, right? So one way that I'm thinking that could possibly happen, like all the value from all of these tokens ends up flowing into something like Teddy Bear. So it becomes something that in some way, shape, or form, if it mechanically, or like, it's not just conceptually backs the Treasury bill just in liquidity, but it actually is like, let's say Maria launches some code that's like, okay, I'm launching my own Treasury DAO, and it's going to be $1 now, and this is the code, and this is the front end, and in order to redeem one Treasury bill, you have to burn Teddy Bear. So that means I have to buff the supply of Teddy Bear up. So all the value from these tokens, not all the value, but value from these tokens that he might hold could end up going into Teddy Bear. I don't actually think that could happen, but maybe it might be something where, because he owns so much of the Treasury bill supply, he'll basically end up locking the supply of Treasury bill in Teddy Bear. So he might end up basically, I mean, how much is in here? So in here, there's...
So by he, you mean the dev?
In this case, Maria, correct. Because Maria has, I think, 30-something billion Treasury bill. And in this pool, there's 1.5 billion Treasury bill in this pool. So what I'm saying, one thing that he could do is, in order to like really lock in this backing of Treasury bill to $1 and giving it this collateral backing, he might end up selling a ton of his Treasury bill into Teddy Bear and like quadrupling these liquidity pools. So then that would pump Treasury bill and then burn that liquidity. So that could be something that he could do. I don't know. They're just some.
Let me ask you a question. How do you see the connection between Treasury bill, which seems like an internal, or at least conceptually, the idea is like it's not backed by the dollar, but it's connected to the dollar. It's $1 worth of backing, right? If like, and if so, if that's the idea, what's the connection between that and pDAI? Like, how do Treasury bill and pDAI relate? Like, how does that work?
Well, I guess the only way that they really relate is through liquidity. That's the only way that they relate. So there's a lot of people making connections that I personally haven't been able to see beyond liquidity. And so one of the things that Maria did through the recent pDAI FUD was he created new liquidity pools with Treasury bill and the P stables. And Maria has never spoken about just pDAI. Maria's only ever spoken about P stables. It's the wider community that's heavily focused on pDAI. It's got all the research behind it, but Maria's always spoken about P stables, so PUSDT, PUSDC, and pDAI. And so if we look at Treasury bill, it has a big liquidity pool with PUSDT. And so the pool with pDAI, it's very small. So that's why I don't really understand how people talk about it from that perspective. So there's only 40,000 in liquidity. So from my perspective, I guess maybe if I'm just kind of like shooting some shit here and just speculating, the way that it can relate to pDAI is through PUSDT. So maybe, okay, so you've got Fed and Treasury bill, and then you've got all the V1 minters with Treasury bill, which are one-to-one minters. So there's like 30 here, 30 one-to-one minters. So if I bring up the map, I'll just expand this. So these are all one-to-one minters. So Fed, you burn one Treasury bill to mint one Fed. At the moment, none of these are at a price where you would do that because they're all under the ratio. So basically, you're better off buying the token with the Treasury bill rather than burning the Treasury bill, with the exception of Ministry here. So from that perspective, the thickness of the liquidity in the Fed pool is very thick. So where is the Fed pool? So Fed pool 144K. So it's actually reasonably small. But if you look at Maria's holdings, Maria owns like 38 billion Treasury bill and like 27 billion Fed. So one day he could just make this a gigantic liquidity pool, and it could be the first liquidity pool. And so when you look at the chart between Fed and Treasury bill, so I'll bring up the chart now. Basically, at the moment, it's sitting under the one-to-one. I think it's like 0.2 to 1 or something like that. So it's like a 5-to-1 swap. Well, actually, it will say it here. So Fed, yeah, it's like a 5-to-1. So 4.93x to parity. So through the Fed and Treasury bill, if and when it gets to closer to the one-to-one, maybe Maria could basically lock it into that ratio so it becomes like very stabilized because of the amount of liquidity in that particular pool. And then through Treasury bill and Fed being stabilized, he can then stabilize Treasury bill to PUSDT, and then PUSDT through its connection with pDAI is how they're connected, rather than Treasury bill directly with pDAI. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. It's kind of a bit of a long-winded explanation, but I've never been able to see the direct connection that people are making between like Fed, Treasury bill, and pDAI.
Right. Well, the thing that makes sense is like the broad message of the developer, which is stable coins, right? And so I think that's so. This is part of the reason why I think it's at the very least collaborating with code, but also in terms of ownership strategy. I think this is why Maria and Richard have sort of a similar strategy, even though it sort of hasn't felt coordinated at all. It's a similar strategy to own supply and to be the market makers, and surprise, surprise, be shaking out the chain at the bottoms together and sort of then waking stuff up in sort of a decentralized, seemingly chaotic way. I believe that there is some at least on-chain coordination, but I think it's a similar strategy. And especially now that I see Richard hinting about pDAI, and I know that he's been very cryptic and very conflictual in the messaging about pDAI, and I think that's intentional. And I think, but the more hinting that I see, the more I see that who's ever thinking about pDAI, right? You know, and I don't. And now that I hear you talking about Maria, like not focus on pDAI, now that makes sense. It makes sense because there's another entity focused on pDAI. I don't know what it is. But Maria is really focused on on the Atropa ecosystem and the potential within the ecosystem, and pDAI extends beyond it. It's pieced into it, it's connected to it, but I think its mission is first going to be all throughout Pulsechain, but I suspect it's going to be cross-chain. It's going to be multi-chain. Because if pDAI has potential if this is all a narrative, I think we'll know in the next months, like where this is going, way more than at least I do right now. And if we see migration of assets over to Ethereum, including pDAI, I think that'll be an indicator that they're actually going for a multi-chain stablecoin that actually is censorship resistant and is unkillable, basically. I don't know that to be the case. I have no idea, but that's currently the constructive speculation about it. And some of the indicators for me are pointing to it's possible. It's increasingly more likely that that's, and each thing that I see says, it's increasingly more likely that they're going for some sort of native stable that can transfer multi-chain.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, what was it? I think it was Binance that ended up having like 300 million pDAI or something that got sent to it back in the early days. So the potentials are most definitely there for that to be the case.
I mean, that's where it gets risky, honestly. Someone who was in Luna and UST, when I saw UST, on private exchanges, it's very concerning, right? Anytime you have private exchanges, these centralized exchanges with big supply and a stable asset, like it's especially these decentralized ones and the more algorithmic ones, it's very risky, because then you've got these huge market makers who don't really care about the integrity of some of these systems. So anyway, that's a whole different story. We don't want to get distracted, but I do think there's a lot of risk when you go from fully on chain to something else. And I don't know. It's beyond my. But I think what we'll see with pDAI is an effort to keep it on chain. Keep it on chain until whoever's in charge of the strategy decides that it's safe, and I don't know when that'll be.
Yeah, I feel like it's it's such a unique idea, and it's in such a fragile state at the moment. I mean, we saw the fragility of it 2 months ago, and that's the only reason why I have said that it could take more than a year, because it's so fragile. It's so fragile that I'm just looking at it from this idea of like a natural thing, a thing that's growing and living and alive, and it's kind of like this. It's been through this like most shocking experience of its existence, which dropped at 99%.
Exactly. And that's why it's a very speculative asset. It's not a stable asset. It's a hugely speculative asset. Anybody that's been in pDAI knows this, right? It's very speculative. Now, maybe there's a central actor but this is not the thing that I'm thinking. I like the possibility of it, but it's not what I'm investing in. What I'm investing in is right now is the chart and the speculation about it. That's it. I'm investing in the chart and the speculation. And from that perspective, I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal chart. So
it's
a really, really good chart. So one of the other things that I wanted to there's just a couple of questions here. So ICHIDAI and Daiichi. So the only difference in those, if you just check Enter the Void on the Treasury System.win website, the difference is the amount that's been burnt to those contracts, which determines how much is in supply. So basically, the only difference is, ICHIDAI's had a lot more burnt to it. So Daiichi, you would burn less pDAI to get Daiichi. So, and then you'd obviously have to look at the liquidity and all of that in there as well. And the other thing that I saw here was this. So TSFI outperforms Atropa. I'm going to have to, TSFI. Have I got that chart there? So this was the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about as well, in the sense of, so Teddy Bear. So the value proposition is the things that I've explained earlier, but then because everything moves a lot in sync, so one of the ones that I was like, there's a lot, right? There's a lot that just move more or less in sync with Atropa. So
Right.
have I got the TSFI Atropa here? I'm not
I
sure.
remember TSFI. I bought TSFI right at the beginning because I remember that there was some role for it. I forgot again what the role is, but I like TFSI only because I like the idea of it. I don't even remember what it was,
It
honestly.
was something to do with the team. So it was like Maria was saying, oh, this is the token that people like his friends or people that support his work can take their profit in. So
Interesting. Interesting.
but I mean, boy, I mean, even all those. So just have a look at this, right? Have a look at this
Okay.
this ratio here. So obviously, I'll take it. I'll go back to the US dollar value just for Atropa. So you can see the Atropa chart. So Atropa chart is up and to the right. It's phenomenal. It's moving with pDAI. It's brilliant. Then you look at it against down. So it's strong against down. So against down, you're losing value. But then you look at down to legal, and down to legal is very strong against legal. So you look at this and you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So you might be in a scenario where you can, I don't know, you can just it's cheap against Atropa.
Yeah, exactly. This is
Against
the beauty
legal.
of your ecosystem. It's the same beauty of TitanX. People who know the ecosystem can play the ratio game, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that if you know the ecosystem and you know the ratios, you can really do well. So you asked me, how did I do on TitanX? I did great in ratio terms, but in dollar value terms, I didn't. But in terms of accumulation of bonded liquidity web, I did really well because you can play the ratios to keep on accumulating value, basically.
And that's really the way that I want to try and look at the Atropa ecosystem more. I've tried building. I've made a token, coexist token, and I don't know. I just think when it comes to like building and creating these things, my desire to do that is like I'm a little bit blocked. It doesn't come so naturally to me as opposed to like investigating it and talking about it and trying to understand it and learn about it. I enjoy that a lot more than actually like trying to create the web. And I've tried to like, one of my mates, Muddy, he's like, he's got all these ideas about what he's going to create. And he's really down on that into that path. So if those are the things that you're interested in, like the name of the game of accumulating as many tokens as possible is such a, I mean, geez, if pDAI gets to $1 and it's got such a heavy bonding to Atropa, and Atropa is connected with all these other tokens, and you can make your own community with your own token like EROS now, and you bond it with any token within the Atropa ecosystem, it's gonna have value because there's value within the web of tokens. It's not going to be like, okay, this pool has got 40 million and that pool's got 30 million and this pool's got 20. That doesn't mean that there's, what did I say, 40, 30, 20. It doesn't mean that there's going to be $90 million of actual value within the whole Atropa, within those three tokens. There's only going to be like a small percentage of value. But again, just looking at it as like this system that I can build into, connect to. Token accumulation is like very integral, in my opinion, for this particular cycle, rather than the moonshots. Although I do think that there is plenty of moonshots. But the other thing that I wanted to say, go on, sorry.
I just want to let you know that I'm about to lose I'm on my iPad and I realize I have about 4% left in the battery. So I'm about to lose my connectivity. So it's all right.
Okay.
I've got a few more minutes. I've got probably 5 more minutes. So.
Okay, cool. Well, let's round up then, because the last thing that I wanted to say on that as well. So Teddy Bear, yes, but then also the other thing to look at is, because obviously Teddy Bear's got a big community, there's obviously lots of people that can potentially sell that token down within the community. With the Atropa ecosystem, when there's hundreds of tokens, you could basically adopt I saw which one did I see here? Which was well, this is no nukes, so maybe not no nukes. But like, well, that you've got affection, for example. But just any, right? So you could pick another. So
So
you had
which
TSFI,
would
so
be a fun one? So you think TSFI maybe,
not
or
necessarily
maybe
a fun one, but okay. So TRSI, for example, and the reason why I say something like that is where TRSI moves basically the same as the Atropa ecosystem, but it doesn't have a community in it, which means it doesn't have sellers in it, which means that you can basically control the liquidity of
right,
the TRSI plus. So you're
right.
basically getting the benefit of plugging into the Atropa ecosystem without having an existing community of potential sellers within that token.
Gotcha. Well, the
So
thing is, yeah, no, that's interesting. It's sort of it's how we think about it too, because what we've done is when we sort of take over a coin, right? It's not really a takeover. It's just we accumulate it, right? People accumulate it, and you can't control the holders, but you can encourage a culture of diamond hands, right? And
right.
if you get in from the beginning, the thing for us is that's what we've got with EROS. We've got diamond hands, right? And so no one's selling, right? No one's selling. People are accumulating. That's why we like pairing with a community, even where there are sellers, because especially where there's a community where you have sellers, you want to give the sellers an option, a use case, so that they don't have to sell, right? And so that they don't have to sell. And so that's what we're giving to TitanX. So for example, if you've got Teddy Bear where people want to take profits somehow, you could say, look, instead of selling, hold your Teddy Bear. I'm just saying, I'm not saying anyone should buy anything, but one way to think about it is buy EROS instead of, and pair Teddy Bear and EROS so that you're keeping your value in now a fee sharing opportunity so that you don't have to sell your bear. You just have to use it to get into a fee sharing opportunity, which is EROS. And so that's why I like sort of pairing with communities that do have sellers so that we can say, hey, here's a use case. If you want to sell on like someone like you is not going to be selling on a 3X, okay? But there are going to be a lot of people that wants to teddy bear, they want to sell. Well, fine. But also there's another option. Sell a small portion of it into EROS and bond it with the web and get the index token of TitanX instead of just selling your bear and getting rid of it. No, you want to run the bear run. I mean, run the bull run with bear, basically.
And I think that there's wisdom to that, again, from the perspective of a bear market. When the bear market hits and you're thinking more long term and you're thinking, I want to accumulate teddy bear, and now you've got this yield bearing asset of teddy bear with EROS
Exactly.
or any of the Atropa ecosystem tokens, and then there's a ratio there in a bear market that becomes very attractive, and then you're accumulating more tokens.
Exactly. And especially in the LP web, how the idea is only do it where we love both tokens, where we love them. And that's why that's why even like Rep BTC, I like that, but I'm not holding it. I love stuff I hold, right? And so I'm holding Bear and EROS, right? That I love that. And that's why long term, I'm going to stay in that pair. I'm just going to stay there long term. Now, that's not to say that I won't peel off profits if there's an exponential run. It's my responsibility to do that, right? Both to peel off some profits and give other people the opportunity to get in later, because that's just how markets work. But I love Bear. I'm holding Bear. And now that I'm even more convicted that it's got a place backing I'm like, right on. I'm like, I'm going to hold the backing of Treasury bill. And that's really important. And that's what we want to create if in every holder group, if people that understand enough to say, you know what, I'm diamond hands. I can take profits, but there's a reason why I'm holding this asset. Even through the bear market. So what? I've held through 2 bear markets. I mean, And if we're smart, we've held some stable coins and we can buy the bottoms of things that we like.
Exactly. And I just think if Pulsechain is really going to succeed as a chain, the way that I'm looking at my portfolio by the end of this bull market, I'm not looking at it like I'm going to sell every single coin that I have, convert it into stables and bridge out. I want to be here forever. I want this to be like a truly decentralized financial system. If I really believe in DeFi, I'm going to believe in it with my portfolio. I'm actually going to do that with my portfolio. Does this mean I'm not going to take any profits by the end of the bull market? No, I'm definitely going to take profits, but there's going to be like a percentage of my portfolio that I take profits and a bigger percentage that I just leave in liquidity, and I'm just accumulating tokens while everybody's dumping in the bear market because I want to be here forever.
Exactly. And that's the idea, and that's why we're migrating back to Pulsechain, because there is that community ethos of people wanting to be in the chain. It's not institutions yet. There will be blue chips. There are blue chips moving in. Aave's moving in. Like other, blue chips will move in, but there's a community of users right now that want to be in the market, that want to figure out how do you do DeFi sustainable. And that's why our strategy, I'm saying because even with EROS, which we just reclaimed, the idea is I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold the fee sharing thing. I'm going to make fees on it just by the volatility in the market, the buying and the selling in the bull market, in the bear market. I'm just going to hold a good percentage of it in the ecosystem. Why? Because it's fully automated. It's permissionless. It's fee bearing. I'm just going to do it. It's sort of part of my passive income machine. That's what I'm going to do.
Passive income machine. That exactly, man. Like, it's like I don't want to be trading and staring at charts all day. I'm very happy to just be sitting on a yield bearing asset, and I can just build and create in the world, and then I want to loop value back from the world back into Pulsechain. I want to make businesses and bring that value from the real world back into Pulsechain, into liquidity pools. And then there's a feedback loop between Pulsechain and the real world. That's what I want to do. If this is really going to be a decentralized financial system, it actually needs to be a decentralized financial system in every sense of the word. Not just, somewhere where I can throw money into a Ponzi and hope that I sell the top and then go and buy a Lambo. That's not a decentralized financial system. That's a one-way ticket to something that really, yeah.
And the one thing that's an innovation of Pulsechain that people who are in Pulsechain don't realize, but I've been on Ethereum, I've been on Base, I've been on Sonic and Avalanche. The one thing that people don't realize about Pulsechain is that there is this ability to capture the fees and the volatility of the market, right? And that's like it's the magic of PTGC, it's the magic of Atropa, it's the magic of the EROS web. It's that if you can capture the volatility, the ups and the downs is the one thing that we can rely on. You can capture that. That's really good. That's really good, because then that becomes, now long term, it may not be the only source of revenue, but currently it's the one source of revenue that we can rely on, is the revenue from the volatility, basically.
Yeah, and it really aligns with Richard Hart's principles, and that's why the deliberateness of that and the deliberateness of V2 liquidity pools at like Uniswap V2, it's like I've seen a lot of criticism, like, why has there been no V3 on PulseX? It's very deliberate. V3 benefits whale holders. V2 benefits the totality of the ecosystem. The math is superior. That's why it's V2. It's like, do you actually think that you're smarter than Richard Hart, and you've come and you're leveraging on his chain, and you think, I mean, people, I don't want to kiss his ass too much, but I think it's very deliberate that it was V2. It's very deliberate that
I agree.
you get much value out of it. And he's trying to build a long-term mindset of people that are thinking like us, of like, I want to provide liquidity. I want to have a passive source of income for life. rather than just Ponzi's in and out. Like there's no longevity there, and it doesn't incentivize long-term delayed gratification. That's one of the biggest things that he was proud of with Hex, that it promotes long-term delayed gratification.
Yeah, and that is like any mantra, needs to be balanced with the alternative. Like the
Of course,
mantra, I mean, that's both marketing mantra, right? It's for sure marketing, but it's also a value built into the system, right?
absolutely.
Right. But a lot of people also like got wrecked with it, right? And so that's why the more that we sort of participate in these systems, at least for me, I had sort of have to discern what's marketing, what's reality, and how do I not get wrecked, in like, and I sort of knew with Hex, I was like, this law, yes, delayed gratification, but I'm not like one of these people that are locking up some unknown asset for five. That's not me. Okay. I'm like, there's no way am I doing that. Why? Because I am countercultural. There's a reason I'm countercultural, because whatever is the cultural trend, I'm going to sort of find a way to resist it. Just my true nature is like, I'm not feeling that. And I'm going to sort of go the opposite direction, right? Which is why personally, I did very well selling Hex on the way up,
Nice. Well done. And this goes back to my point of the fragility of when I was talking about pDAI before, because Hex is that, and Hex at the moment is still in a very fragile state. But I see a future where, if I think that Pulsechain is going to succeed, which I do think it's going to succeed, I think it's going to be one of the most liquid chains on the planet. I think it's going to be the #1 blockchain on the planet. And if I think that that's a reality, that's when Hex is really going to come into form. It's going to be able to do what it needs to do and have enough liquidity in it, backed by the rest of Pulsechain, that it's not going to have these massively down volatile periods. But because it's such a fragile system and we just forked it to create Pulsechain, it was too much. It was too weak. And that's how I think about pDAI as well. Somebody here made a comment which, look, I have alternative opinions, and this is where I'm thinking. He says big gains will take 4 years this cycle. Core tokens only all-time high, and pDAI will hit 15 cents. I love that line of thinking, and I love that line of thinking even as a protective thing, because again, just like you, what we were just talking about with Hex, the marketing thing, and it's also a marketing thing by the people who want us to buy pDAI.
I mean, think about pDAI. Think about pDAI at 15 cents. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's sort of
it's
as
so
a speculative. I mean, think about it. Not as a sort of a stable coin, but as a speculative asset, which is why when I heard you say, oh, it may take time, I'm like, right on. It probably will. If it's going to happen, it's going to take time. So pDAI hitting 15 cents this cycle is a stunning success. I mean, that's just stunning success. Now, it also suggests that unless there's a centralized effort to bring it to stability, it'll crash hard, which is normal for a speculative asset. It's so early, right? Just look at the chart. It's like, I mean, how many X's people in crypto forget? I mean, how many X's is that from here for pDAI at 15 cents? What is that? That's
from
like
the very bottom. That's gosh.
How about from right here? How about from where we are right now?
From
it's
where
like,
we are. Hang on. So from where we are now, it will be.
I'm about to lose you in battery, by the way. So thank you, Stephen. Let me just say this now. Thank you for hosting me. You've been just the ultimate host, and I really appreciate your time and your perspective and your intelligence and your heart to stick with this and to not react to the universe with all the negativity. You have stayed positive. I saw you early on, and you have stayed positive and high vibe, and so props to you, seriously.
Thanks, Chiz. I appreciate that. And you know, it's been a beautiful chat. Actually, it's been a really nice chat, and I can really tell when I talk to people, I can feel their heart. So I feel really connected to you, and
Yeah.
It's been a really enjoyable conversation. And I have to say, I'm a very shy, introverted person, so I always do get like a little bit like, oh, conversation with a new person. But it's been a really, really enjoyable conversation, and without exception, every time that's happened, that I've talked to somebody new, it's always been like this beautiful conversation that I've really, really enjoyed. And this has been no exception to that. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I mean, you know, we've been going for nearly 2 hours now, and I could keep going, but your battery's about to die, and it's nearly 1 a.m. here, so it is a good time to wrap it up. So, is there anything that you want to conclude on or say before we wrap it up?
No, just thank you. It's been a pleasure.
No, my pleasure as well. So, and in answer to your question earlier, it's a 40x to 15 cents. That's,
I mean, check it out. And so think about it seriously.
amazing.
And even when I talk to my friends now, it's like, bro, $300 now in pDAI as a speculative asset. I mean, where, like, as a speculation, like, why not? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and because people in the community, that's a conservative estimate. A 40x, a 40x for pDAI, and people are like, oh, that's no, it's actually, it doesn't matter. All speculation is speculation, and whatever it is crazy exponential return. And even if it's 3 cents,
Oh, yes.
so I mean, that's like a 10x from here. Where can you do that? Now, we can only do it because of the speculative value. That's it. It's not because it's a stable asset now. It's not. It's going to take time and commitment, and it's going to either take a decentralized effort or more likely a combination of centralized and decentralized coordinated effort. And I think that's what we're heading towards. But without the centralized effort, there is no stablecoin. There's no stablecoin without a centralized entity saying this is what we're going to build. Only because it wasn't designed as a truly decentralized. It was designed with centralized controls in it, for sure, because that's what we've seen happening with it. It's centralized. I'm not in charge of it. You're not in charge of it. Somebody else is in charge of it, and it's not me. You know, so
these Pulsechain pioneers are.
All right. Well, anyway, Stephen, it's been a pleasure. Have a great day or a great evening.
Thank you very much, Chiz. You enjoy the rest of your day, man. Take care.
Peace.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the stream, contributing to the chat. I think, you know, one thing that I'd like to just end on is the thing which really sparked me up there was that there's this nothing token on Pulsechain which has been given life by being plugged into the Atropa ecosystem. That moment just really sparked me up. The idea that now can bring a wave of potentially 10,000 people onto the chain, because it's a tiny community, this EROS, but it's the concept of it. It's the concept of what it is. And that concept is multiplied by all the PRC20s. That's still the story that I see in my mind with Pulsechain. Like, the potential of this chain is just so incredibly massive. It far exceeds the potential of any other chain. So I never get deterred by the downs. I just look at, okay, where are we headed? what are all the pieces that are coming together, and now starting to see the pieces all coming together. We spoke about how the SEC, we've all been talking about the SEC. We're talking about this marketing effort that Richard's trying to put out to the community. We're talking about the way that the community is coming together. We're talking about how all the green candles are starting to happen now. It's like all these things are compounding together to really produce what Pulsechain is really for. And now this cross-chain interoperability, which we're starting to see manifested in the TitanX community, starting to come over. And there's only a small community, there's a small amount of liquidity, but that equals opportunity. That's when you want to get into it. So for me, I was so sparked up by that conversation, and just seeing again why I love Pulsechain so much, and why everything about Pulsechain has always felt so in tune with life. And I never felt like, I was having a conversation with one of my boys today for over an hour, and it's like we're both just saying like there's just always been this place in our heart where our faith in reality, in God, in the universe would just be crushed if Pulsechain failed, because everything about this blockchain and the way that my experience on it has occurred, my experience with Richard Hart, my experience with Hex, it goes beyond just the norm. So yeah, I love this conversation. I hope there was some good takeaways for everyone. And yeah, I mean, these are the things that I like talking about: systems and communities and ecosystems, and this, yeah, exactly, cross-chain interoperability enter the void. So we're starting to see how this is actually manifesting now on Pulsechain. So great stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you girls enjoyed it. And again, I've got the link in the description, but if you haven't seen the stream from today with Discord Syndicate talking about the marketing efforts, just go there for the energy. SJ, the way that she presented it in that first half an hour, the passion, the energy, that's the stuff that I love. It's like other people's conviction, and I feel that conviction, and you would feel it too. And it's so infectious. And when there's so many people like that talking in that manner on Pulsechain, like, oh, this is actually us now building Hexacode. These are the things that she was saying. It's so infection. It comes from a place of like pure source energy. It's so beautiful. You just don't get that on other blockchains. I haven't seen it. Maybe it is out there, but I haven't seen people talk about it with this kind of heart-based purity. It's more just like, okay, yeah, here's a chart and it's going to do a 10,000x in this many days, and like it doesn't have the purity that Pulsechain has. So go and listen to that Discord Syndicate stream. It was a phenomenal stream. And like I said, as someone that's in Australia, I really want to help push this non-profit charity concept. So I spoke to the guy who's setting up the charity, so Jimmy, and I've created a Telegram group now. So the Telegram group is in the description. So if you're in Australia and you want to get involved in that, there is the one that SJ was talking about in, I can't remember what it was. It was t.me. It will be in the stream. I can't remember what it was. That was more about the distribution of the containers. What we're doing here is now trying to establish the network across Australia for DeFi education. So communities in every single city having meetups, whether that's just for Pulsechain or whether it's not supposed to be. It will be for DeFi at large, but obviously there's going to be a big Pulsechain holding there, because really this is really where we're at the epicenter of decentralized finance. So if you're interested in that and you want to be part of that and be part of the growth of that, then just join it. I literally created it like 2 or 3 hours ago. So the name has got to change. The logo is going to stay, but I'm going to be building it out with all the different cities. And if you want to just contribute to that, link is in the description. So I'll leave that. Thank you very much, everybody, for contributing, sticking around. It's very late, and so thank you very much. And everybody who's in the USA and Europe, enjoy the rest of your day, and good night to Australia. I can't. What did I press here? No, I don't know how to stop. Here we go. End stream. Thank you very much, everybody.